morning, everybody. Happy Christmas Eve day, I guess it is. This being the holiday season, the three of us decided to join together today and talk about what is Christmas all about? What was the original idea and where has it gone? And it can best be defined in the 4 Sundays of Advent. And the first one is peace. The second one is faith or hope. Then there's love. And lastly, there is joy. Now, peace is the greatest thing that we all desire. Each and every one of us, every place in the world. When we have strong peace of mind and a sense of well-being, we can make it through the most difficult of times. One of the greatest mysteries and miracles that has always astounded me is the fact there's 7 billion people in the world, and each and every one of us is different. Each of us came into this world a very unique individual, unlike anybody that had ever been born and unlike anybody that ever will be born. Also, in addition to that, each of us embarks upon our own unique and individual path, which shapes us and makes us into the person that we are, once again, unlike everybody else in the world. Yet at the same time, we're all alike. Every single person wants peace of mind in order to experience life in a somewhat restful manner. We all want to experience love, either giving love or receiving love. We all need joy in our lives from time to time, and we all need to have a strong faith that allows us to make it through those difficult times. So we're all completely different and we're all completely alike, and that is a miracle. The only thing that we're missing is we have not created a consensus that we are all alike and we do not share with the congeniality or the affection or the kindness across the globe. We have battles and we have wars. But nevertheless, we all have the same desire for peace of mind. Now, I don't believe there's another story that better illustrates this than the one called Christmas in the Trenches. Many of you may have heard of it. It took place during World War I. World War I started in July of 1914. And by the time it got around to December, the troops in the trenches were miserable. Their attitude was soured. They wanted to go home. They didn't like where they were at. The Germans had approached the southern boundary of France. France was defending itself, and the Britons came in to help them. So there's trenches on both sides of this battlefield, and in between there was about a 50-yard space, which they call no man's land, because that's where the dead bodies lie. The soldiers that rushed one trench or the other would get killed, and they just leave them to lie there because you'd risk your life getting back. So on Christmas Eve day of 1914, in the dark of night, a German on the other side of no man's land began to sing a Christmas song. The French and the Briton heard it, and when he was finished, they sang a song back. Then a German got out of his trench and began to walk onto the battlefield, and he held a Christmas tree up, a tiny twig, as a reminder of peace. Well, then two Britain got out of their trench, and they met the German midfield. And all of a sudden, they became friends, and they decided to celebrate the holiday. And pretty soon, men from both trenches came out, and they met in the middle of this field, and they played soccer, and they sang songs, and they shared presents from home and photographs, even though the penalty for fraternizing with the enemy was death. These men put aside war, they put aside political attitudes, they put aside everything for the sake of humanity and shared in the peace, the joy, the love, and the faith that all of them had. Well, when the upper captains and generals found out about this, they were outraged. And so they sent new troops in with cleansed minds, so to speak, that would carry on the battle. But the troops that met in the middle had made the agreement, if they were ordered to fire again, they're going to fire over each other's heads and miss everybody. That, to me, is what Christmas is all about, putting aside all of the little grudges or complaints or dissatisfactions we have with life, putting away all of the resentments and remorseful things that exist in the past, and just come together and recognize that each of us can be a conduit of peace for the other. Sandra, what do you have to say about that?
Thank you, Duke. I wholeheartedly agree. If we find peace within ourselves, we can emanate that peace throughout the world. When I think about Christmas, I think about the gift that we're given that we so often take for granted. I don't know how many of you have been out rushing to shop and get that perfect gift for someone and run up your credit cards and spend your last dime for that one day, when the gift of life is the most priceless gift that we have. And I'm reminded of how do we share that gift of life. We think about it a lot during Christmas. We think about giving a lot. But what about the rest of the time? And so I was thinking about a story that I saw recently on the internet, and I'm sure you've seen and heard this story on the news. It reminds me of the importance of giving, not just waiting for Christmas, but throughout the year. A woman by the name of Kate McClure had run out of gas and run out of cash, and she had just taken the exit ramp in Philadelphia, when a homeless man standing holding a sign realized her distress and came to her and says, "Wait right here, don't move." And he went to the nearby gas station with the only money he had in his pocket. Maybe it was the only money he had had for a long time. He had $20. And he purchased gas in a can and brought it back and filled it up or put it in her tank, with no thought or no expectation of anything in return. He probably didn't even know where his next bill was going to come from. That $20 was like $1 million to him. But Kate didn't forget that. She started a GoFundMe page. She found out that he's a veteran. He was a paramedic in the military. And she and others, because of this story, raised over $400,000 for this man. And then an attorney volunteered his time to help him set up a fund where he wouldn't just spend all of his money, it would just come to him once a month. He was able to buy a house, and he was able to start a retirement fund. To me, that is the spirit of Christmas, and it's every day. In this city, we pass by homeless people every single day. Here on the plaza, out north, out south, east and west. How many times do we stop and just say, "Hello, how are you today?" And really look them in the eye and mean it, and not feel threatened, because like us, they're just trying to live their lives. That's what Christmas means to me, much like the soldiers in World War I. Set aside your differences and just love each other. Nhien and I were looking up a quote, and we couldn't decide who said this, because you find all kinds of quotes by different people, so it's in your bulletin. And I have it as Khalil Gibran, but in your bulletin it's another author, probably around the same time, maybe before. Khalil Gibran, or the other, said, "I slept and I dreamed that life is all joy. I awoke and I believe that life, that joy, is service. I served, and now I know that service is joy." So to me, Christmas means serving each other, whatever those needs are. We can do it right here in this sanctuary, right now. Turn to your neighbor and smile. Just smile. You don't have to say anything. Sometimes a simple smile is like $1 million to some people. So I want you to take that with you today and the rest of the season and throughout the new year. You are the gift that keeps on giving. Nhien?
Thank you, Sandra. So your last comment actually reminded me of a famous saying by the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh that says, sometimes, your joy is the source of your smile, but joy can be a choice. Sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. And I think that as Duke, Sandra, and I gathered together in our ministerial team meeting and reflected on the meaning of Christmas and the core message that we wanted to bring forth today, what struck me about the themes that were present in our message was this deep sense of service, being of service, this giving nature that we want to express toward the world. But what struck me about that is so often when we think about service, we think about it often in terms of how we set ourselves aside for others. And from a unity perspective, I would actually reframe this way of being of service to others. Because there is a way in which when we stop and set aside our egoic self, we actually come into a deeper embodiment of our spiritual selves. So it's, in a way, the forgetting of self comes into the remembrance of self. And so it struck me as we were reflecting on this notion that all the qualities of Advent, faith, peace, love, and joy, are ways we actually remember our true nature. And it strikes me that this inner remembrance is so different from the way that we think of when we can habitually think of the joy of Christmas. Because for me, like, normally I'm inclined to look outside for joy, right? In my everyday life, I might go, oh, well, they've got all these family members coming over, and I don't have any family members coming over. So I have to reassess, whether I have the foundations for joy or not. Oh, what a lovely gift my husband gave me, but then I look out and I compare to someone else's gift or treasure, and I might lose that sense of joy. So for me, this week, what the quotation that really came alive for me came from Theodore Roosevelt, and he said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." Comparison is the thief of joy. And this reminded me of a story when I was in maybe 6th grade. My father gathered all the kids, there are 5 kids in our family, around the dining room table, and he was about to share these exciting stories about his first trip back to Vietnam after we fled there at the end of the war. And he gathers us around, and here we thought, oh, we are so blessed to be in America, and we had the sense of righteousness, and we had these material goods that they didn't have, and we were eager to hear, in some ways, the stories of the roughness and poverty over there, and how my dad had gone over there to help. And instead, he looks at us and says, I went over there, and the people in the smallest village that we come from were the happiest people I have ever known. And it was only the people who had access to television that were unhappy, because they compared their lot to that of others. And as a kid, that really struck me, that wow, if I am just here in this moment, I'm not comparing even my own past to my future. I'm not comparing your present to my present. I'm in the present moment, the gift of that. And from that, there is an inner joy, peace, love, and faith that arises. And from this place, we move out into the world in ways in which we can be the light of the world and be of service in the same way that Jesus modeled for us. So it's with these thoughts that I would love to impart among us here today as we enter into our Christmas Eve together, grounded in the knowing of the spirit of Christmas, which always resides from the depths of our own being. With that, I invite us all to join together now to prepare for a time of meditation, because it's not by us talking, but by you centering in the truth of your own being that you know all the fruits of the Spirit of the season.